third epistle general of St. John, chapter 1, verses 1 through 14. Verse 1. The elder unto the well-beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Burkett notes, observe here, 1. The penman and writer of this epistle, St. John, who wrote the two former as appears by agreement of them in words and phrases, which are peculiar to this apostle. He styles himself not an apostle, though he was so, but an elder, that word being a name of honor and dignity belonging to the chief of their tribes. Agrees very well with the office of the apostles set over the 12 tribes of the house of Israel. Observe, too, the person to whom this epistle is directed, Gaius. We find 3 persons of this name in the New Testament, to wit, Gaius of Macedonia, Acts 19, Gaius of Derbe, Acts 20, and Gaius of Corinth, Romans 16, whom St. Paul calls his host, and of the whole church, who being eminent for his hospitality, especially to the ministers who went out to preach the gospel among the Gentiles, taking nothing of them. This man seems to be the person who had the honor of an epistle sent to him from the pen of an eminent apostle. Such as do excel in their kindness to the faithful ministers of Jesus Christ have ofttimes in this life some special marks of honor and respect put upon them by God, as tokens of his gracious acceptance of them. Observe 3. The interest which Gaius had in St. John's affections. He styles him the well-beloved Gaius, and shows also what was the motive and attractive of that his love, namely, the truth. That is, the gospel of Christ, called eminently the truth. He loved Gaius in the truth, that is, in great sincerity and for the truth, for his sincere professing and practicing the doctrine of the gospel. The elder unto the well-beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Such as love the truth are and ought to be the special objects of our love. Verse 2. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. Burkett notes, observe here, 1. This holy man, Gaius, who was so hospitable a host to the ministers and members of Christ, had but a weak and sickly body, and wanted health. Strength of grace and dearness of respect, even from God himself, cannot prevail against diseases. Such as are most holy are sometimes most weak and sickly. Observe, too, that though Gaius had but a weak and consumptive body, yet had he a very thriving and vigorous soul. It's a very common, yet a very sad and true observation that men of strong, healthy, and active bodies have weak, lame, sickly, and sinful souls. Ah, wretched sinner, when under obligations to serve thy God best, thou forget him most, and prostitutest thy health to the service of thy lusts. How does the health and ease of one day deserve the service and thankfulness of thy whole life? But, alas, instead of that, thou makest him to serve with thy sins, and layest the first fruits of thine time and strength upon the devil's altar. Observe 3. Our apostle's wish on behalf of Gaius, namely, that his body were as healthful as his soul was holy, that he had as much health in the one as he had grace in the other. I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. Behold here, such an improved and well-grown Christian was this holy man Gaius, that our apostle makes the prosperous state of his soul the measure of all that prosperity which the one could wish, and the other desire. As thy soul prospereth, so may thy bodily health, for the service of God and thy soul. Verses 3 and 4. For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Burkett notes, observe here, 1. The commendable testimony which the brethren that came from Gaius gave to St. John concerning his holy and unblameable conversation, according to the direction of the gospel. The brethren testified of thee, that thou walkest in the truth. Good reports of our brethren, without detracting anything from their worth, is a manifest duty. Observe, 2. With what joy and rejoicing St. John receives the notice of Gaius's adherence to the truth, and of his answerable walking thereunto. I rejoiced when the brethren came and testified of thee. He did not envy the grace of God so largely conferred on Gaius, but rejoiced in it, and no doubt blessed God exceedingly for it. Soul mercies are the greatest mercies, and matters of the greatest joy to gracious souls. Observe 3. That additional joy which St. John expresses to hear that his children, that is, those persons whom he had converted to Christianity and begotten to Christ through the gospel, did walk in the truth, that is, in the sincere practice as well as in the outward profession of religion. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in the truth. The faithful ministers of Christ rejoice more in the welfare of their people's souls than in all their worldly wealth or honor. Verses 5 through 8. Beloved, thou doest faithfully whatsoever thou doest to the brethren and to strangers, which have borne witness of thy charity before the church, whom if thou bring forward on their journey after a godly sort, thou shalt do well, because that for his name's sake they went forth, taking nothing of the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such, that we might be fellow helpers to the truth. Burkitt notes, observe here how our apostle at once commends the great charity of Gaius, and at the same time excites him to the further practice of it. Where note 1, how charity towards Christians is here styled fidelity to Christ, because shown to them upon Christ's account. Beloved, thou doest faithfully whatsoever thou doest to the brethren. Acts of charity are acts of righteousness and fidelity. He that is uncharitable is unjust. Note 2, the extensive nature of Gaius's charity. It was to brethren, yet not only to brethren, but to strangers. That is, not only to the brethren of the church with him, but to strangers in their travels to and fro as they came near him, but more particularly to such faithful ministers as came out of foreign parts to preach the gospel, whom Gaius had hospitably and charitably entertained. Note 3, how he exhorts Gaius further to furnish and help these ministers in their travels with all things necessary for their journey, because 1. They preach the gospel freely, taking nothing of the Gentile Christians for their pains. 2. Because it was for Christ's name's sake they went abroad, to preach the gospel, some say, to avoid persecution, say others. 3. Because to entertain such is to further, as much as in us lies, the propagation of the gospel of Christ. Such as contribute towards the maintenance and support of the ministers of Christ for his sake shall have the present comfort and future reward of cooperating and contributing their parts towards the propagation and spreading of the gospel of Christ. Verses 9 and 10. I wrote unto the church, but Diotrephes, who loveth to have the preeminence among them, receiveth us not. Wherefore, if I come, I will remember his deeds which he doeth, prating against us with his malicious words, and not content therewith, neither doth he himself receive the brethren, and forbiddeth them that would, and casteth them out of the church. Burkitt notes, observe here 1, the pious care which St. John took for the relief and succor of such faithful Christians as now traveled amongst them, both to avoid persecution and to preach the gospel. He wrote to the church on their behalf, desiring their reception and advising their relief. I wrote to the church, that is, I wrote for them, and sent my testimonial to the church on their behalf. Everyone has a pen to plead for himself. Happy he that has both tongue and pen to intercede for others. Observe 2, the opposition which St. John met with in so good a work. Diotrephes, a proud man, regarded not his letters, acknowledged not his authority, yea, slighted the apostle, prating against him with malicious words. The holiest men may meet with opposition in the holiest and best of actions, wherein the glory of God and the public good are most concerned. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes received us not. Observe 3, the holy apostle's resentment of this indignity and wise resolution thereupon. When I come, I will remember his deeds. That is, I will sharply rebuke him, and use that severity towards him which his crime deserves, according to the authority which God has given me. Learn hence that though private offenses against Christ's ministers must be forgiven and forgotten by them, yet when an offense is prejudicial to the church, it must be opposed and openly censured. Verse 11. Beloved, follow not that which is evil, but that which is good. He that doeth good is of God, but he that doeth evil hath not seen God. Burkitt notes, here St. John advises his beloved Gaius and those with him not to imitate and follow the evil example of Diotrephes, who not only refused charity towards the Christian Jews that wanted it himself, but would not permit the Gentile Christians to receive them or relieve them, but to follow the example of God, who is good in all. And accordingly, he that is merciful is born of God, but he that is malicious hath no true knowledge of God, but is a mere stranger to him. Behold here the eulogy and high commendation which the Spirit of God gives to charitable and good men. He that doeth good is of God. He is allied to heaven, born of God and his offspring. But the uncharitable evil man is a composition of spite, envy, and malice, born from beneath, and the devil's offspring. Verse 12. Demetrius had good report of all men, and of the truth itself. Yea, and we also bear record, and ye know that our record is true. Burkitt notes, having propounded the example of God in the former verse, he propounds in this the example of Demetrius, as a pattern to them for their imitation in works of piety and charity. Not only common report and the apostles' testimony, but his own good works did justly recommend him as an extraordinary pattern to their imitation. Note that the commendations which our own good works do give us before the world are more valuable than all the praises and applauses which can be given to us by men, yea, by the best of men. Demetrius has a good report of all men, yea, the truth itself. Verses 13 and 14. I had many things to write, but I will not with pen and ink write unto thee. But I will trust I shall shortly see thee, and we shall speak face to face. Peace be to thee. Our friends salute thee. Greet the friends by name. Burkitt notes, thus our apostle concludes his epistle with an apology for the brevity of it, hoping in a short time to see him and to speak face to face unto him. He concludes with his apostolic valediction, Peace be to thee, upon which, adding the brethren's salutations, it teaches us that kind remembrances and greetings are suitable to Christian friendship. Our friends salute thee. Greet the friends by name.